Hello, good humans, and welcome back to Self with Amanda. I'm your host, Amanda Tran, and on this podcast, I share ideas, experiences, and have conversations to explore the self. By developing our own self awareness, we can better show up for ourselves and those around us, and hopefully all live happier and healthier lives. Today's episode is all about being in your 30s and being child free. My 30s is easily the best time of my life so far. I am so thrilled to be in this current stage of life. And to be totally honest with you, I'm so happy that I don't have kids. And this episode is not here to bag out a life with children for my listeners and friends with kids. That is certainly not the case at all. This episode is about what life is like without kids in your 30s. My hope is just to bring a different perspective and to talk about my own experience navigating the past decade of questions and comments and everything in between when it comes to maturing and, I guess, adulting without kids. Most of my life was spent ticking boxes and planning ahead, waiting for the next thing to happen. And these were the questions that I was surrounded by. The adults around me were always asking about the next thing. As a kid, it was, what are you going to be when you grow up? And only a few answers were acceptable. When I got to high school, it was about planning towards the subjects that would get me into the course that I wanted to get into. Then it was the pressure of scoring high enough to get into the course. And then, of course, I got into uni. And while I was studying, I was in a relationship. And then that became about, well, when are you going to get engaged? And as some of you may know, I was married before. When we were engaged, the question was, when are we going to get married? And then when I did eventually get married, it was, when are you going to have kids? And for me, as a kid, as a child, as in an actual child, I had planned, I guess I'd really dreamed of being a mum. You know, I was quite a typical mothering, nurturing type of girl. My little sister came into my life when I was 6, and I was so happy to have her and play with her, and I was changing her nappies and stuff. And I guess she was like a real life doll. And I loved playing with Barbies, I think right up until I was about, 12 years old or something. And I always imagined myself as a mother, and I was excited. And I remember in high school, I would say to my friends, oh, I'm going to get married when I'm 22, because 22 felt so far away and it felt like I would be really mature. And I said, okay, so I'll get married when I'm 22 and I'll have kids by the time, I'll have my first kid when I'm 25 and I'll finish having kids by the time I'm 30. And part of, for sure, the rhetoric that I'd grown up with is that you have to have kids in your 20s. Otherwise, there were comments like your body won't bounce back and you won't be able to, have energy to be around your kids. And there are a lot of different comments. A lot of them, for me though, because of the pressure that I had grown up around, was around body image stuff. It was really what I was honestly worried about, was if I was going to be able to lose baby weight and things like that, rather than would I be prepared to raise little humans in this world. I didn't think about the actual responsibility of the lifelong commitment and task in itself. I was just worried about, being a cool, fun parent and being young. So that was what I'd imagined when I was a teenager. And then, of course, coming into adulthood and realizing at 22 that, holy shit, I'm 22 and I'm still so young. There was this realization that I had so much growing up to do. I had so much to figure out within myself, and there was no way that I was prepared to bring little humans into this world. Interestingly, when I got engaged at 24, something kind of, I guess, like dawned on me that perhaps I didn't want to have kids, and it was really confusing. And over the 6 years after that, from when I got engaged, got married, and I was with my ex, I went kind of through this roller coaster of, I'm not sure if I really want kids. And in that time, my mid to late 20s, I had this conversation with a lot of different people because I kept being asked. And my answer was like, I don't know if I want kids. I don't think that I do. There isn't this deep yearning and desire in me. And of course, with good intentions, what a lot of people tell you is, oh, don't worry, like that will come, or like you'll figure it out and you'll want kids later. Don't say that you don't want them at all. You might regret that. Or if you don't want kids and then you leave it too late, you're going to regret it. And it was all around this regret, this, if you don't make this decision right now, you will regret it later and there's nothing you can do about it. And it was like a guaranteed thing, which was strange. It was often, of course, well-meaning, but coming from people with kids. And something I would often think is, well, you don't know what it's like to have kids, to not have kids, sorry. You don't know what it's like to be in your 30s and not have kids. How do you know that it's something that people would regret? Like, we can only know from our own experiences, right? Or if there's a lot of data around people who don't and really say that they regret it later, I don't know. But I wasn't really convinced based on those recommendations alone. And I didn't want to continue being someone who was just checking things off. My life had taken such a massive shift when I decided to travel and embark on this journey of uncovering me and discovering what really aligned with me. And having children was one of those things that I had to unpack and find out for myself. Of course, my whole life took a turn at 30 when I ended up separating from my husband at the time. And suddenly I found myself at 30 going through a separation and not having kids. And then it all hit. What did it mean for me? And of course, that all that pressure that comes from society landed, and I was like, okay, so what if now the whole choice has been taken away? What if I am single forever and this is it? What if what everyone said was right and I do end up regretting it? There was a lot of what ifs and a lot of confusion, but what I ended up choosing to do was just trusting that I would in time figure it out if that was something that I really wanted. Something that's really interesting for me is the pressure that exists around having children. We have the societal pressure of going, okay, well, as an adult, you get a job, you get into a relationship, you get married, you buy a house, you have children. And there is this order in which we're expected to do things, and we're supposed to do them because allegedly this is what brings contentment, fulfillment, and happiness. And I'm not saying it doesn't. Okay, so I want to make it really clear that for some people who have chosen this life, this really does bring fulfillment. And I love that. I love that for you if you're listening and that's you. I love that for people if they've chosen that life. Something that I find concerning is when people fall into the trap of doing things because it's just what's done or it's what's meant to be done. And I made an active decision for myself to break out of that because I want to be intentional with how I live. I want to be active in my decision making rather than being someone who is doing it because everyone else is doing it. And for me, the responsibility of raising children is one of the largest, if not the greatest responsibility you could give to an individual. And so it's not one that I take on lightly at all, and one that I believe deserves careful consideration and thoughtfulness, because this little human and innocent life relies on their parents to shape them, to provide, to allow them to grow and to nurture their growth as an individual. And there's just so much involved with that. As someone who now carries complex trauma, and I look back on my childhood, I see so much of what shaped me now as who I am and what my parents just didn't know. And so we put this pressure as a society on people to rush this process of having kids. And I know a part of that is obviously a biological clock that exists. Like, I'm not naive to the fact that we don't, as women, we don't have forever to make this decision. And the opportunities to get pregnant decline rapidly into your 30s. I'm very much aware of that pressure. But the issue that I guess have is when we put that particularly on people in their 20s to make that decision so rapidly without careful consideration. Life can be incredible with or without kids. And this is in part where this episode is going. So I want to talk about some of the things that we face in our 30s when you're someone like me headed towards mid-30s and, I don't have kids. So one of the first things I hear often is that, life doesn't have meaning or purpose without kids. A lot of people with kids will tell you how much more fulfilling their life is, how, everything made sense in the world. I do not doubt for them that has happened. I don't doubt it for a second. But I do believe that it's a common misconception that without kids, your life can't have meaning, or that life lacks meaning or significance. In reality, and my personal experience is that in my 30s, it's been a tremendous time of personal development, of growth and contribution to the world and to the people around me in a completely different way. And my personal fulfillment comes from so many things. Some of that is my own personal achievements and what I'm able to do with my time, how I've been able to do the work within myself and heal and work through a lot of shit that I've been through, and then help others to do the same. There are so many projects I've been able to undertake in my 30s and devote time and energy and effort to it in a way that just simply wouldn't be possible if I also wanted to raise children the way I hope to. And when you get to this stage in your 30s where you've grown, I think my 20s was so fun for navigating a lot and figuring out my beliefs, my values, for figuring out who do I want to be around, testing the kind of person that I am. And for me, my 30s has really brought about a confidence and an assurance in me and in the person that I am. And so I've had this freedom to pursue my passions and uncover those passions that I didn't get the opportunity to earlier in life. I've been able to sacrifice various just sacrificed a lot of time and various opportunities in pursuit of other things. I've sacrificed my career as a lawyer to go and travel the world and take incredibly risky moves to do the things that I love doing and to try and create this life of travel and doing the things that I love, like snowboarding and freediving. I have been able to do a lot of travel and have had the freedom to do that on my own with my various partners, and make decisions that only affect me. And so my life's meaning and purpose has been shaped so differently. And so a lot of people will look at, I guess someone like me or other people in their 30s and think, well, you just don't have this richness that I have because I have children. And what I invite there is to consider that perhaps it's possible that on both sides, with or without children, it's possible to have a life that is full of meaning and fulfillment and richness. It's just different. Some of us find that meaning and fulfillment from having children. Some of us find it in being able to make a difference in our community. Some of us find it in our individual pursuits of athleticism or in a career, or being able to contribute and build and nurture your own business. There are so many things in which we're able to find meaning and purpose in. And I don't believe that it starts and ends at having children. And by not having kids, it really removes, I don't want to call kids an obstacle because I don't think that that's fair or true at all, but it removes a challenge that comes because there is a huge responsibility in having kids. So something that I am incredibly grateful for is that I've had the opportunity to uncover so much meaning and purpose and fulfillment at this stage of my life. And it hasn't relied on having to raise little humans. Like, what an incredible gift for me. And I hope, if you're someone who is in your 30s and you don't have kids, and perhaps you're thinking, shit, the only way I'm going to find it is in having children, is, I'm not saying that is or isn't true, but there is an opportunity to pursue passion and purpose at this stage of your life. And purpose doesn't have to be a lifelong, you're here on a mission to do one thing and one thing forever. It's just about finding what is purposeful and meaningful for you at this stage in your life. And on the other side of that, I'd like to also note and highlight that there are also challenges that come with navigating your 30s without having kids. Part of that is that pressure that society puts on us, particularly women, to justify our decisions. And for some, they've decided once and for all that they don't want to have kids. And it's crazy to me that we ask people to justify the decision not to have children when we don't ask people to justify their decision to have children. From my perspective, having children is the much bigger and greater decision that has enormous consequences, not just on the individual, on the people around you, and on greater society. So it's always been really interesting to me that when someone, including myself, would say, oh, I don't want to have children, that people would drill into that and be like, why? No, that's wrong, or you'll regret that, or that doesn't make any sense, or maybe just when you're, maybe it's just this time, or maybe when you're done doing X, then you'll want them. And I always wondered, if someone were to say, yeah, I want to have kids, does society ever go, oh goodness, there's I don't know if you just heard that. I forgot to turn do not disturb on. So I need to quickly do that to make sure I don't get any other notifications. When people say that they do want to have kids, do we then question their intentions around that? Do we say, well, are you sure that you really want to have children? Are you sure that if you start trying, you're not going to regret it? Or are you sure that you're really willing to sacrifice everything that comes? Have you considered all of that? I mean, these are very, in my opinion, fair questions for each person to ask themselves. This is something I've asked myself, because once you make the decision and the human comes into the world, you can't really go back and, return to sender. So that's always been interesting to me, that there's this need for justification from people around you. And I know from speaking to other people that can be quite a frustrating challenge, the constant questioning of a decision that you make for yourself. And there aren't often many, I guess, decisions that you make and stand strong in that people question so often. People don't often question your choice of career or your choice of partner, at least not to your face. And yet when it comes to having children, there's just this need to provide a good, a justified reason for it. So and I know I asked on Instagram if people had questions around this, and someone raised this point about being questioned, and I could hear the frustration in the way that they spoke about it. Is I just want to encourage you to stand firm in your decision, and that you don't have to actually provide any explanations for people at all. And it's okay to say, that's just my decision. That's kind of the end of it. And I guess another challenge that exists is it is a big decision in the end, coming into your 30s. And as a woman, for me, soon arriving in my mid-30s, recognizing that, well, the decisions I make will impact, over the next few years, whether or not it's really possible for me to have children. And that's been something for me that's been quite a personal challenge, I'd say, over the past 10 years, going, oh, I don't think I want to have kids. And then at some point telling my ex when we were married, I am quite certain I don't want to have children. And then having to kind of grieve through that process, coming out of that relationship and going, well, maybe I do want children. Maybe it's just I didn't want children with that person. And then kind of ending up on this bit of a roller coaster and being with a very toxic partner. And at that time going, I don't actually think I want children with this person. And going, well, maybe I do want kids, but is it with this person? And I remember thinking, if we were to have children, I wouldn't, and the relationship didn't work out, I wouldn't trust this person to not try to take my kids away from me. And for that reason, I'm quite certain this is not the right person to have kids with. And that in itself is a challenge, navigating the person in which you want to have kids with, if you want to have kids at all. So arriving here for me now in this beautiful, healthy relationship that I have, and being allowed the space to genuinely consider it, because this is someone who I would love to have children with, and going, oh, perhaps I actually do. And so it's been this, quite a roller coaster ride where I have now landed at, yes, I would like to have kids with my partner if that opportunity arises, but it's also not a now thing. So the challenge of that is timing. And I recognize that my time is not unlimited, and that we don't have, 10 years. I think perhaps in an ideal world, what I would like is to not have to worry about having children for another 5 to 10 years. But alas, here I am in my 30s, and that's just not a reality. So that is in itself a challenge. And being able to carefully consider that is pretty tough. My partner and I have had many discussions around this, and we love our life as it is. And so we're not prepared right now to bring kids into that. What I think is incredibly important is having a strong relationship and not bringing children in. This is my own personal belief, and not bringing children in just for the sake of it because of time or age or the pressure from society. And I think the younger version of me who imagined that life would be so easy, I'll get married at 22. I'll be ready for marriage at 22. I'll have kids at 25 and then be done by 30. It's going to be great. I had a very naive view of what life would look like as an adult. And yeah, that's kind of just not the reality. My challenge at the moment, when it comes to kind of the timing of it all for us, is that I have so many things I want to do as an individual, as an athlete, and I don't want to have children right now. I would love to have kids with my partner, and he would love to have kids with me. And we just love our life so much together. We love the fact that we get to wake up together in the morning. I wake up with the sun, to no alarms. The house is quiet. I have my morning routine. I get to just nurture myself in the morning, and then we spend time cuddling in bed. And then mornings are slow and beautiful, and then we get to work and we're productive and we have so much quality time together. It's incredible the amount of time that we get to spend and how much we enjoy it. And I just know that having children will change that. We both know that, and we want to enjoy this for as long as possible. And we both have things that we want to pursue. And now is just not the time to bring kids. And I know that you don't always get to time it and whatnot. And as much as what is within our control, we're choosing not to. However, the flip side to that is recognizing, we've set out to say maybe in 3 or 4 years' time. Well, at that point, I know, and we both are fully aware that the chances for me will decrease significantly. And that's just something that we have accepted and recognize that what might happen is we get to a point where we go, okay, now is a good time for us, and we might not be able to. And we've navigated that and gone, we are okay to accept that, because at every point in our lives, we are doing the best that we can do and making decisions. For me, what's important is making a decision for present me and not out of fear for future me. I don't know what's going to come, but my present life cannot be spent just trying to mitigate everything that happens in the future. Otherwise, I'll never genuinely enjoy and live in the present. It's always about preparing for something that hasn't yet happened, that might not even happen. So the best that I can do is make the decisions that I have now. And that's how I've navigated this challenge. In considering whether or not to have children, I remember making this comment to my grandma a few years ago that I don't think I want to have kids. And she said to me, but who will take care of you when you're old? And I thought, how strange is that, to bring children into the world because you're worried that when you get old, no one will take care of you. I'm like, children aren't your slaves. And for me, there's no expectation. I want to bring children into the world for them to enjoy all of life has to offer. And if they want to look after me at some point because I need looking after, then great. But I don't believe in placing that expectation on children. But I believe it's important for us to consider our motives when we make big decisions like this, because it absolutely shapes the reality and the upbringing for children. And there are so many kids who are brought into the world and into families with parents who don't really want them, who abuse them, who treat them as if the parents have done them a favor by bringing them into the world. And something that, really hurt me when I was young was when my parents would say to me, "Do you know how much it costs to raise you?" And, throw it back in my face. And I remember thinking, I didn't ask to be here. Like, it's actually not my choice at all. And bringing, having that thought that I still carry with me now as an adult is like the most unfair thing to do to a child is bring them into the world and then blame them for being here, or bring them into the world and punish them for their existence. They don't have a choice. So that grave responsibility and decision to bring them in means you creating a life that they deserve. And I believe that children deserve opportunities, and they deserve unconditional love and acceptance. They deserve attention and time and energy and effort. And if that is something that people don't honestly believe that they can give and bring into a little human's life, I'm not sure that people should be having kids. That might sound really harsh, but yeah, that is something I will stand behind. It's huge. And so yeah, quite an interesting comment from my grandma there about who will take care of me. I was like, well, I'll take care of myself, and if I can't, then I guess I will die if I don't end up in a home or something. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about is about relationships, and whether you're in your 30s and you're single, or you're in a committed relationship, or you're already married, priorities and expectations shift coming into our 30s. And without the responsibility of having to raise children, there's just a different kind of energy that we can bring into relationships. And it allows for this fostering of deeper connections. And it's not even just in an intimate relationship with a partner. It's just relationships all around. Being able to have incredible shared experiences with so many of my good friends in my 30s who are also on the same journey as me is amazing. And for people who are single in their 30s, I've witnessed this in my own mates. It's a time of exploration and self-discovery. They learn a lot about themselves. Of course, that doesn't mean that it comes free of challenges as well. I know that there are many for them. But being able to just pursue their passions and go for it is awesome. They're able to, not just them, but for me as well, being able to meet new people, being able to have all of these great new experiences is just something totally different. And not that it's impossible with kids, it's just a lot harder. And that is something that I have had confirmed by many of my friends with kids. And so if you're someone who perhaps is single in your 30s, I understand that that can also be challenging and lonely, but it is a wonderful opportunity to embrace this time, to cultivate new connections, to cultivate meaningful connections with people, and to deepen your relationship, not only with yourself, but with people around you, and to unpack and uncover what you truly want in a partner without the pressure of, having children, or like keeping it together for the sake of children, which I have heard. I heard that a lot in my own house. And again, that just places a lot of unfair pressure on kids. So having that opportunity is a wonderful thing to be able to navigate in your 30s when you don't have children. The other thing I wanted to share about is, as a woman nearing my mid-30s, considering what it means if I do want to have kids in future. Well, when. It's more like when at this stage, actually. I think, the if question's been answered, and my partner and I are quite sure, mostly sure, that we will have kids. We are. But when we go to try at some point, if we can't have kids, what's that going to be like? And so something I've had to seriously consider, and something I've never thought about in my 20s, is egg freezing. And I've spoken about this with a lot of my friends, actually, some with kids, some who had a harder time conceiving. I've spoken with friends without kids who do want kids but aren't in a relationship. I've spoken to a lot of women about this, and this is not to at all say that there's just a right or wrong thing to do. It's completely up to the individual, and something that I had to consider. So I guess this is me sharing a bit of my experience in this. And I did research because I thought, well, what I understand is obviously the sooner you can do it, the better, because of I don't know, it's so weird saying like the quality of your eggs, but I do think it's actually like the quality of your eggs is higher the younger you are. So the earlier you can do it is more ideal, is what I've uncovered in my research. And I then looked into the pricing of it all, which is quite expensive in Australia. And it's not supported by our healthcare or anything like that. So, it would involve me forking out like nearly 10 grand or something. I think at around 7.5 to 8 grand just for the procedure alone, plus the storage prices. And I have seriously considered it. And at this point, I guess I spoke with my partner about it, and our decision was like, okay, well, maybe we give it another couple of years and then make a decision. Because something we have thought about is, well, is that a path we want to go down? Freezing our egg, like my eggs, also means that we have to undergo IVF. It's a whole different journey and process in itself, and that is an option. And the other option is, if we try and we can't have kids, are we okay with that? And so far at this point in time, which I recognize this decision can change as life moves and you experience different things, but at this point in time, our decision and my decision is to not do that, and I'm okay with accepting that if we can't have kids, then we can't, and we don't. And we will spend the rest of our lives together, and it'll be amazing, and we'll have a great time, and we'll have to grieve that when it comes. At least for now, that's our decision. There's just the reality of these like different financial pressures and stuff, and this is the best decision for us. But it's one that is quite taxing. I have spent a lot of time thinking about this, and sometimes on days I'm like, oh, maybe, yeah, if I had unlimited access to money, that I perhaps would do that, just because it's a why not thing. And this is one of the challenges, right? Like, there are sacrifices that we are or aren't willing to make. And I know of other friends who have chosen to freeze their eggs to ensure that they have the highest possible chance, because they 100% want kids no matter what. I've got friends who have said, if I reach this age and I don't have a partner with whom I want to have kids with, I've frozen my eggs so that I can then have kids on my own, and I'm happy to do that. And that is just not the case for me. My discussions with my partner when I spoke with him was like, well, and what my priority I recognized for myself was most important is I want to be with a partner who I want to be with for life. And I would choose an incredible relationship without children over having kids either on my own or not with the right person. So that was a decision for me, but it was a lot to even get to that. You know, I think often people who have children look at people without kids and think that it's come from like a selfish, reckless place of, or maybe like an I don't want to, yeah, kind of just a lack of consideration for everything involved or being naive or something. I would say from my conversations with people who don't have children that they have spent far more time carefully considering, thinking about, and navigating all the different possibilities and scenarios when it comes to kids. I dare say more so than people who choose to have kids. And that's simply because when you don't have kids, like, and it's in your face all the time, because naturally that's just what happens. You get to your 30s and the majority of the people around you probably do. It's always the minority that don't have children. So it's all around you. You can't help but think and consider it. You can't help but question your own choices and really come to a firm stance on what it is that you want for yourself. But yeah, it is. There's so much to consider in all of this, and it is emotionally taxing at times. And I know as well that beyond the actual decision to have children, that for some people, they can't. And that is a painful journey in itself, to grieve not being able to do something, not being able to bring children into the world when it's something that you want so much with your partner. And, you know, I guess this is where I have a bit more issue with people poking and prodding, because I know people on this journey who are having a really hard time. And that line of questioning of like, why not and stuff, I think can feel like blame or failure for a lot of these people. And I guess that's just to say that if you wonder why people don't have kids, that perhaps it's okay to leave that thought in your mind and to not have to vocalize it. And if people choose to share with you why they don't, then sure, that's their decision to share that. But I don't think that it's always helpful. I mean, you know, everyone's free to do whatever they want and you can always ask, but we really don't know where people are in any point in their life and in their journey. And so just if they don't have kids, they don't have kids, and that's okay. You don't have to convince them that they need to. And finally, I wanted to talk about fulfillment and legacy. I know that many people associate having children with like leaving behind some kind of legacy, some mark on the world. And I'd like to highlight that there are many countless ways to make a meaningful impact on the world outside of your own spawn. Your legacy might be the relationships you nurture, the different causes that you champion, that you stand behind, that you believe in, that you affect change in. It might be the work that you do that creates a positive impact in your community. It might be the impact that you have in your family, in your friends. It might be the way in which you work to donate that money to do better somewhere else for other people. It might be simply just the person that you are and how you can help the immediate people around you. There are just so many ways to leave behind a legacy that is beyond having children. And I guess this is that reminder that it is possible, that you can do that. So if you are someone navigating your 30s and worried about the fact that you might not leave a legacy, about the fact that you might not have meaning and purpose, and that you're there wondering and questioning your decisions, this is a reminder that it's okay, that it's very natural and normal to experience all of these things in your head and to wonder and to doubt, to question, to fear. And I want to remind you that your life is meaningful and it is valuable, and that you are able to have enormous contentment and fulfillment and joy without having children. If that right now is not even an option to you, or if you are choosing not to. I asked the audience, I asked Instagram what questions you might have for this episode. And so I hope that I've answered some of those. And one of them, someone asked me a question of when you tell someone that you don't want to have kids and they tell you you'll want to have them when you find the right partner. And the question is, why do they do that? And I don't know why people do things. I'm not here to make assumptions about people's intentions. But what I will say is we all see the world through our own lens of experience, which means we often make assumptions that whatever our experience was is going to be the experience of other people. Perhaps for some of us, and I know that that's definitely been the case for me, being with my partner has really solidified my decision about children. But that doesn't mean that for everyone else it's going to be. I know this incredible couple who have been together for like 20 years. They don't have children. They are clearly each other's person. And I don't doubt that for a second. And they don't have kids. And finding each other, they didn't then want to have kids. They made a decision not to. So to answer the question, I would say, yeah, we see the world through our own lens and we often project that assumption onto other people. And here's the truth. If you have children, you have no idea what it's like to not have children at this stage in time. If you don't have children, you also don't know what it's like to have children at this point in time. I have been around so many of my good friends who have kids. I spend a lot of time with them. I am there for the day-to-day things. Often, I'll spend like a week long straight with them and it's very intense and I get a glimpse of it. But I would never dare say I know what it's actually like to be a parent. And in the same way, at each stage, we're changing and we're so different. Even if at some point later in life, I do have kids and I'm like, oh, wow, life has like changed in this beautiful, amazing way. I hope that's the case anyway. But, if I get there and it's like that, I would never, I guess, consider to someone else that you also have to get there and feel the same thing. I know people who, I think what people often think is like, and I've heard before, is you'll never regret having children. It's like the most beautiful and amazing life-changing experience because they themselves feel that and they don't regret having kids. Fantastic. I'm stoked that you don't regret it. However, I know people who have said, if I could have a do-over, I would not have children. They love their kids and it's not this regret, but it's like actually looking at all the things I could have done with life. I kind of wish I'd made different decisions. And so it is entirely possible, I guess, and this is what I would love for everyone to consider, is it's entirely possible for us to have an incredible life with or without children. It's entirely possible that the other side also can experience just a different kind of joy, a different kind of meaning, fulfillment, to feel a sense of leaving a legacy, to have all of that with or without children. It is possible. So bit of a longer episode today, and I've talked around a lot of things. If you have any questions or you want to share any comments or you want to hear more about this or we want to open up and get into the nitty-gritty of something, then send me a message and let me know. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, tuning into Self with Amanda. Thank you so much for your support and your messages and comments. I value and treasure them so much. If you enjoy this show, please rate and review it. You can listen on Spotify, watch on YouTube, and follow me on Instagram at Self with Amanda. I release episodes every Thursday. I will see you next week. Bye.